Organizing is a sense of responsibility, looking past your own benefit, but in seeing that in working with the rest of the community, with your immediate neighbors, you're really creating a beneficial situation.
I think for many years, people made an assumption that government would take care of everything, from the federal government to the state government to local government.
What we're beginning to see around the state is that the relationship between local governments and their residents is fundamentally changing. And it's changing for several reasons, but I think one of the most important is this current fiscal crisis. That quite frankly, the funds are not available for local governments to deliver the services that they always have.
Everyone recognizes that government, if they ever could, cannot do it alone. The success of any endeavor is built on partnerships. It's built on a variety of funding sources. And it's trying to identify those community partners, bringing them together to figure out what kind of project, what kind of an issue.
So the change happens in different levels. Again, you know, the folks from the city doing business a certain way and then learning that the rules and the guidelines that they currently have don't apply to what projects the community members are working on. That's where the change happens.
As residents pick up the newspaper every day, they're seeing layoffs in their local government, they're seeing services being cut. Now, the response to that in one sense could be, well, isn't that terrible, this service has been cut. But what we're seeing around California is a much more engaged response, that residents are beginning to see, well, I understand that these services need to be cut because budgets are what they are, but if we were to work together to maintain this library being open or this park or some of these health services, if we were to take a deeper or stronger role here, then it's possible that you're going to be able to maintain these services in operation, and we are beginning to see that.
As we look at how a citizens group becomes a viable political force, we felt that it was really a good idea to be forthright, but and continue our work. But at the same time, we were being told by certain governmental agencies that this really wasn't a good idea. We could rock the boat, we could create problems. The city wasn't ready to act on those problems if we created them, and we could make things worse.
Identificar las metas y las necesidades es tan importante porque de ahí está la posibilidad del éxito de un negocio. Tú tienes que ponerte metas realísticas, que tú de veras tengas las posibilidades de poderlas lograr. Porque si tú tienes unas metas que en realidad no tienes las posibilidades ni las herramientas para lograrlas, pues nunca lo vas a dar, ¿sí?
It's not an easy process. We all have individual goals and desires that may not mesh well with an organizational structure. And occasionally, I think neighborhood associations are famous for arousing passions and having divisive issues that tear their organizations apart. The strength of a neighborhood organization really is working to identify those divisive issues, bringing in facilitation if necessary, to make sure that the incredible energy and passion and commitment remains.
When I first started working on the Greenway project, I saw it as a project, and I didn't, in my mind, think of community organizing. Over these past number of years, what I've begun to realize is that our committee, our campaign committee, has built a community. And we've built a community by having monthly meetings, by trying to listen to what people have to say, to have everybody come to the table whenever they want, invite people in.
Human nature is to see immediate results, And with community organizing and creating change where folks are taking measures into their own hands to create those changes does take a while. It's easy for folks to get discouraged. And so that's why it's important to meet on a regular basis. You're keeping the momentum going, you're keeping people motivated, and even if folks are aware of even the smallest steps that are being taken, to get to your long-term goal is what is needed.
But it's definitely really important to have, Board of Supervisors, City Council, all of those higher commands to come and be involved with us. Everybody has something different to talk about. We all have different connections, so we always bring all that to the table and discuss what's going on.
From the public official's point of view, when you use the phrase public engagement, the picture that goes off in their heads, very understandably, is some sort of confrontation between the public and themselves, either as a council person or as a city staff person. I think one of the reasons why that's happened is because the processes that we set up around public comment and 3 minutes on a microphone almost predispose themselves to that kind of confrontation. And so the one thing that I would just offer to public officials that really do want to hear from the public, and not just from the public that might be called the gadfly or the angry confrontational person, is that you should look at the processes by which you engage your public and try to set those up in such a way that that kind of confrontation isn't automatic.
What we did originally was to talk to people in city government and say, how do you envision this happening? We're coming to you for help. We really want to know what we should do. And they said initially, well, there's nothing you can do. This will be a road. We kept asking more people, and we'd ask people on staff and department heads and city council and the mayor and the city manager. We're not political people. We didn't know the system very well. And it's one thing just to call someone up and say, I'd like to have an appointment with you, but then when you sit across the table, what do you say?
City government, schools, county government is sometimes very obtuse and difficult to penetrate, and people do not know who to talk to, do not know how to make a difference in their actions. I know which staff members to route them to, or perhaps facilitate a meeting with and say, okay, here's an idea. Here are some groups and some individuals who want to make things happen. How can we identify the institutional barriers to make that happen?
But I tell the officers it's important that we, as public safety in Orland Park, that we get out of our cars, we make contact with the citizens, because what you want is you want people to trust and have confidence in your public safety department, and with trust, all things are possible.
Each one of us has our own story, and every person has something to contribute.
What might be important for leaders here in the County of Sonoma to know is that this new way of looking at leadership is something that started with the fiscal crisis, but I don't think it's going to end for the foreseeable future.
Sometimes people get discouraged, and it's really good to look outside of your own little neighborhood and your own village and your own little world and see what else is out there, because nothing is really original. Somebody else did this before.
You start out with the germ of an idea, and you build support by talking to your friends and neighbors and to make sure that that idea is viable, and then you just plow forward and make it happen.